drives the ball in the air and a brilliant catch.
Keep up with all the cricket action with the Test Match Special podcast.
And he's hit it clean as a whistle back over the long leg boundary.
Exclusive interviews and in-depth analysis on every series.
That batting lineup can stand up with the best in the world of any country.
And he goes and bowls to Butler. That must have gone, surely.
The Test Match Special podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Don't know how many times you've been to this ground, Craig, but you never fail to enjoy winning here, do you? I love it.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. I'm Ray Bradshaw and this is the latest in our series of Premiership preview episodes. As we look ahead to the new season, we've got one for each top flight team, and in this one we're heading to Perth because we're going to be talking all things St Johnstone.
Delivery comes in, it's right to the 6-yard box, it's bobbling about, and then it's in, it's Kennedy forced in and into the back of the net. St Johnstone have scored, and Dealang Jayasamy is claiming it. It's played over the top, and Kimpioka's in behind here. Benjamin Kimpioka, he's done it. St Johnstone double their lead at Pittodrie. Carey looks up, it's a wonderful ball, goal! Nicky Clark scores! Thrusts his right boot at it on the stretch and knocks it past Liam Kelly. One of the crosses of the season though has set that one up.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Today for this episode we're joined by Jamie Beatson, St Johnstone fan and St Johnstone legend David Wotherspoon. Jamie, first of all, Jamie, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm alright. How's all things Jamie Beatson's life been in summer? What you been up to? Anything exciting?
Nothing particularly exciting, no. I've not been away, not done anything much, just been at work and living the usual life, unfortunately.
At least make something up, Jamie. Say you went to Disneyland or something like that. I don't know.
No.
David, how's things for you? Another pre-season, what was this? Pre-season number 14, 15, something like that?
Yeah, I've lost count. But no, it was it was great. It was great. It's been good. It's been really good. Just enjoying being back playing football again. It was a longer summer than usual. I think normally it was only like 3 or 4 weeks we would get off, but somehow we managed to get about 6 weeks, I think it was. So,
what do you do in those 6 weeks? What do you do?
Well, firstly, try and find another job. When you're out of contract, it's up to the next one. So no, that was the main, obviously, objective of the summer was to find another club, and I've landed on my feet at Dunfermline, so I'm more than happy.
And I think St Johnstone fans want to know this. Is it weird trying to find another club after a decade at one and however many years at Hibs before?
It's crazy. I've been through it twice now. It's the most stressful time of my life. Just trying to find another club, trying to find another job. When you've got a family of 5, it's even harder to try and juggle all at the same time. But no, we're settled now at Dunfermline and happy and enjoying to be back playing football again.
Yeah, Jamie, it makes our summers look easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's straightforward. Don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Jamie's off to work after this. It doesn't make a difference. So
I'm on the clock, yeah.
Yeah. Before we talk about St Johnstone coming up this season, let's have a look back and try summarise the last campaign for the Saints. The season started with a disastrous League Cup campaign as they finished third in their group, not qualifying after defeats by Stenhousemuir, Ayr United and Stirling Albion, who won 4-0 in Perth, which was quite a memorable win last season. They didn't fare much better in the league, and with no wins in 9, manager Stephen McLean was sacked following a 4-0 thrashing at St Mirren in late October. Craig Levein was appointed as new boss, and under his stewardship, they moved off the foot of the table, eventually finishing 10th on 35 points. They fell out of the Scottish Cup in the 4th round, losing 1-0 to Airdrie. Nicky Clark was their top scorer with just 6 goals, and goalkeeper Dimitar Mitov their player of the year. Jamie, we'll come to you first. Just reading that back, you realise everything in isolation, but when you put all that together, that was a pretty bleak season last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, don't worry, I've not forgotten any of that. And it wasn't good, and when you've summarised it pretty well there, it was absolutely brutal. And given the start we had, to actually finish outside the playoff and relegation place, this was something of a miracle. It was awful. There was no redeeming features all the way through. Obviously, we picked up some form later in the season, eventually got the points on the board to get away from the bottom two. And have survived for this season, but obviously there needs to be a big turnaround. I don't think anyone wants to be in a cycle of just scraping to 10th place every season. That's no fun for anyone. So we're trying to put that behind us and move on to better things this year.
Yeah, and as a Partick Thistle fan, I would scrape 10th place every year, by the way. So that's that. David, obviously, it must have been very odd for you because it was outside looking in for the first time. And I think, I know you won't comment on this, but I think the kind of tone for last season was set in the way with maybe your exit and everything that kind of followed on through that, a real lack of communication, all that kind of stuff. What was it like for you watching St Johnstone last year? Because a place that has got a big part in your heart, but it was a struggle last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a complete struggle for me personally. Watching on, it was hard. It was the way that things were left left a bitter taste in my mouth, which I didn't enjoy. I didn't like it, but it's football, it's a business, and you have to sort of get over these things and remember the good times. So I've tried to do that, and looking back on their season, it wasn't pretty. Obviously, the start and the cup games didn't put in a good place to start with. But yeah, the defeat to Airdrie in the Scottish Cup 1-0. I mean, I've played there a couple of times, and it's a really tough place to go and play. So I could let them off with that a wee bit, but they picked up the decent results when they needed to. Towards the end of the season, they picked up points here and there when they could have lost the games. I think the big one was at home against County towards the end of the season, where they got a late equaliser.
Sidibe's in there! Adama Sidibe rescues a point for St Johnstone, and how vital might that be come the end of the season? Which
sort of put the confidence back in them, and going into that last game, and County's head sort of went a wee bit, which ultimately saved them from relegation.
Yeah, and it's funny because at this point usually we ask for the highlights and lowlights of last season. That one against County was probably the highlight. Jamie, would you agree that?
Yeah, and that's not the kind of thing you want to come off a season. I think that's the best thing we did was beat the team that finished 11th at home. There really wasn't much to write home about. As you say, David's history with the club and the cup competitions. That is what those are the big moments. Those are things that you remember as a fan. And since the double winning season, it's been really bad in the cup competitions. A couple of seasons in a row of going out in the group stages in the League Cup, first round exits in the Scottish Cup. It's not great. There's not been highlights as such. We have scraped our way through. So, as I say, that's where we need the turnaround. We need these big moments back. We need something to get excited about.
Also, I'd just like to congratulate you, Jamie, because you went 6 minutes without mentioning a double. So that is almost a new St Johnstone record. So well done.
I normally manage 4 minutes between mentions. So
I thought that was just a rumour.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. So it's we need these big moments back, and it's what you get excited about as a fan, isn't it? It's the big wins, the things out of the ordinary that happen in football that get you off your seat and get you excited. And they've kind of disappeared since the biggest moments you could possibly have a couple of years ago. So that's what we're looking for really this season, is to get back into a place where we can win big games.
To be fair, we did get to the semi-final the following year in one of the cups. We lost 1-0 to Celtic,
and that's because you went off injured. That's when it all went wrong. Yeah.
That's when I had the bad injury. So
I think what we're going to see is David is going to constantly mention whenever he played in cup games, you did well, and when he didn't play, you lost 4-0 to Stirling Albion. I think that is going to think.
There's a clear correlation.
Yeah. Venn diagram. Jamie, we talked about the low light with David there, but obviously being a St Johnstone fan, what was the lowest point last season, and did it come before the season with the communication from the club, or was it the League Cup games, Airdrie, a club legend like Stephen McLean getting sacked? There was a lot of bad points, wasn't there?
Yeah, it's hard to pick out a moment. I mean, obviously you've talked about David's departure from the club, and that's not the way anyone would want any player. Players come and go. There will be players that pass through clubs with no mark made and no big fanfare in their departure. But when you've got someone who themselves and their family are part of the Saints community, part of the Perth community, so well known for it and have done such amazing things for the club, the way that was handled was wrong. The way you then had another guy who was huge in all the success we had in Stephen McLean managing the club, and not everyone wanted him to do well, and it didn't work. But you for a real low point, you can't look past the loss to Stirling, 4-0 at home in the League Cup group stages. And at that point, you thought, we are in big trouble here. When you look back on the team that started that game, you can kind of see why it happened. There's a lot of young kids in that team, and kind of you look at the game itself, and every time Stirling went forward, they scored. 4-0 probably wasn't a reflection on the way the game went, but it was a big wake-up call, and unfortunately it took us quite a long time to really heed that and make some changes. So yeah, it's hard to look past getting absolutely pumped at home by a League One team. So
it seems like one of those, it happens to one team every year, doesn't it? Obviously, this weekend we saw Hibs, who'd won their first two games comfortably, losing to Celtic Hearts. It seems to happen that way. Just quickly, before we move on to this upcoming season, which is the whole point we're here, David, if you had to rate out of 10, what score would you give St Johnstone's season last year?
Well, you're looking at probably 2 or 3. It's been one of the lowest points. But you know what? Looking at it, it's been one of those seasons where it's like a turning point for the club, where there's things happening on and off the pitch, changing of players. Because throughout the time I was there, there was a lot of loyalty, a lot of players, like a core group constantly at the club, which was great. And then it felt like a family club. Whereas now it's a complete opposite. It's changed hands. It's changing players. There's completely different squad. So it's almost like it's went through a transformation through the last season, and they've stayed in the league, which is their main priority. So now it's a case of rebuilding and looking forward to the future.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a second. Jamie, out of 10, what would you give, as a St Johnstone fan, what would you give your team out of 10 last season?
I'm willing to stretch it to a 4, just on the basis that kind of towards the end of the season there was a bit form picked up. There was some players brought in who made a difference and added something different to the squad. But I mean, that's really pushing at it, that we managed to claw our way out of going straight down. Which is where we looked like we were kind of September, October last year. But yeah, I think David touched on something really critical there, was that there was, in his era of being at Saints, there were a core of players, and that core of players changed over time, but there were always continuity in the squad. With you started off your Dave Mackay's, your Stephen Anderson's, Fraser Wright's, all the way through Team Stephen McLean, all these guys, and then it transitioned over time, brought through a lot of young players, so you had your core of being Kerr, Gordon, Clark, David, all the way through. That's all gone now. So it kind of remains to be seen whether a new core could be re-established. I think that's quite important for a team like Saints, is to have that stability and continuity, and not just be a place where journeymen, transient kind of players come in, pick up a check for a year and then disappear again. It's what you build success on. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay, let's look ahead to the upcoming campaign. How exciting are times at McDermott Park with the takeover by American investors led by Adam Webb? David, do you think this takeover will mean there's a bit of money to be spent?
Honestly, don't have a clue, but time will tell. Obviously, I've listened to a few of his interviews, and he's got expectations and he's got drive, and he's coming in with investors, and there's talks about moving the stadium and things like that. So it sounds like there's going to be a lot of change. Obviously, it won't happen immediately, but you've just got to see how it goes. But I think the main thing of all is the club staying in the league. That's where they're going to make their money, and that's where they've got to stay. So it's first and foremost, they've got to get it right on the pitch.
And Jamie, how impressed have you been by the start of the season so far? So what have you had? You've had a 2-1 win at Brecon in the Craig Levein derby, and a 2-0 win at home over a Morton side who haven't started that well. How's it look so far?
I couldn't give Saturday's performance a 6 out of 10. It was functional, it was acceptable, it did the job. It could easily have been 3 or 4-0. Morton were very poor. I was surprised at how bad they were. I thought they'd have just a bit more about them, but they really didn't threaten. Saints scored the first goal and let them have the ball for 20 minutes, and they did nothing with it. So yeah, there were signs there, and there's still a lot of new players coming in and making their debuts and kind of seeing where they fit into the squad. There's still a bit of a hole in the midfield as far as I'm concerned. There's a bit more pace about the team, which is good. It's been a bit plodding for a couple of seasons. Not much movement or pace in there. You've got guys that can run a bit now, which makes a difference. But middle of the park's still a concern for me, and maybe at the back as well. But it's a work in progress, and I think there's a long way to go in this transfer window.
Well, let's chat recruitment then, because obviously, David, there was a not a big turnover, but key players have gone. Dimitar Mitov, who was Player of the Year last season and was excellent. You've got Liam Gordon away. Andrew Considine's retired. That core has gone. Also, I wanted to get a footballer's point of view in this because Kyle Cameron's come in and Craig Levein has handed him the captain's armband despite him being a lone player. What do you make of that and how would the players react to that?
Yeah, so I think it's a strange one, having a lone player that's only going to be there for a certain amount of time, but you never know, you might stay there for longer. There's the possibility of that. But to put on a lone player with no real connection to the club or anything like that, or ties down or anything like that, it is a strange one. But at the end of the day, he thinks that's the right thing to do, and they've got to believe in that and put faith in that. So they've got to really to help him out as well, as the captain. They can't look at it in a bad way. They've got to take it as it is and get around them, and they've got to perform as a team. So I think no matter who's the captain, they've got to stick together as a team and really push on this season, I think. And
obviously you didn't play with Mitov, but how big a loss is Liam Gordon and Andy Considine, for example?
Yeah, Liam was part of the furniture there. I mean, he was there through thick and thin, and obviously been through the good times, and he obviously thought it was time to move on for a new challenge. He was a great servant to the club, a great captain, a great leader, and certainly one that I think the Saints fans will definitely miss. But obviously Mitov was their player of the season last season, and I watched the games and he was making save after save and keeping them in the games at times. So he obviously deserves his move to Aberdeen. But obviously with Considine gone and even Ryan McGowan as well, there's a back four that was playing regularly last season with a lot of experience. So that's one thing that's maybe they've brought in quite a few younger boys, and like you said, the middle of the park, I think they've got a lot of players in there but not much experience. And likes of Carrie McPherson, who seems to be the main sort of centre mid, is still pretty young and had his fair share of injuries, and hopefully he can stay injury free this season and get a good run at it, because he is a good player, a good quality player.
And Jamie, how excited are you about Craig Levein's first full season in charge? Obviously he was brought in to do a job of keeping you in the league. He did that. I mean, I'm a media darling, so I love Craig Levein, I'll be honest, but what are the St Johnstone's fans on, and what's your take on it?
I think it's very hard to judge what he did last season because he came in and the squad just wasn't where it needed to be. He's now got his own squad, so it's all on him now. He's brought in a lot of players, a lot of unknowns, a lot of unpredictable kind of players that we just don't know a whole lot about. But he has picked out some good players. I mean, he's brought in Sidibe, for example, who he really saved the end of last season. He's brought in other guys who look like they can do a job. So you kind of got to trust that as he builds his own squad, it will get better. We were kind of saddled with the system last season that just didn't work and was really quite bad to watch. Maybe a bit of a sign that he's going for a bit of change. We went 4 at the bag, which we haven't really done for quite some time. And it did allow us to push on a bit more. But then that, as I say, tempered the fact that was against quite a bad Morton team that we were easily able to run right through the middle of. I mean, you had Sidibe and Kimpioka going up against Kirk Broadfoot in the Zimmer frame, and they just ran right past them. So there's signs of good things coming, but there is still areas of the park where we need quality brought in rather than project players and kind of punts from the Portuguese lower leagues and that kind of thing. So we'll see where he goes. By the end of August, I think there's going to be quite a few changes to the squad, and that's when we'll really be able to judge it.
And do you think one of them will be Sidibe, who you mentioned there? David, how key is it for St Johnstone to hold on to him?
Yeah, obviously he's done really well at the end of last season, but it's how he gets on this season if he is to stay, because it's just, 6 months he was there? So it's not a lot of time. Obviously he came up with some key goals.
Smith's cross is deflected. It's flicked on. Sidibe's there! Sensational from Adama Sidibe, who scores his first goal in St Johnstone colours, and what a way to score it!
But it's how he gets on after a pre-season, during the start of the season, see how he reacts. And obviously I think if they can keep Nicky Clark, as you said, he was the top goal scorer with 6, but he also missed a large part of the season. So if they can keep him fit as well. And obviously, I think the main one out of the team that sort of helped last season was Graham Carey, who popped up with big goals.
Oh, what a goal! What a goal that is by St Johnstone. Wonderful football right up the park. It's played into Stevie May. He's got his back to goal. He rolls it to the edge of the box, and Graham Carey with his left foot passes it into the top corner. Brilliant goal from St Johnstone.
And created most of the chances or goals that Saints scored. So it's relying on him to be that creative spark, which I think they need more of around the team.
There's a big thing when it comes to Carey and various other players as well, is deploying them in the right places. I think you'll know David as an attacking midfielder that there's areas of the park that you probably prefer to operate in and you maybe feel like you get the most out of it. I think for Carey, he needs to be playing on the left and using that left foot to get balls into the box and taking on men down there. Quite a lot of last season, he was deployed on the right to cut inside or as like almost a quarterback kind of position, and it just at no point did either of those work. So hopefully, again, as Levine reshapes his squad, we can get him into his best position every week and get the most out of him. And that's going to be critical because, as you say, he was quite key last season.
To be fair, when he did score his goals, I felt like he was coming in from the right-hand side onto his left foot to curl him in the top corner. But he did set up a lot of goals when he was playing on the left. So, I mean, he popped up with crucial points either position. But like you said, I think it is crucial that he play him in the right position in an attacking sort of mindset.
And Jamie, you mentioned some of the players that St Johnstone have signed so far. Bear in mind, there'll be fans of other teams who listen to this podcast, so give us your tip. Who should we look out for? Who do you think is going to be good?
Oh God, I mean, it's really difficult because we just don't know enough about a lot of these guys that have come in. There's a lot. The guy Essel that's come in the last few weeks, who, I mean, he's really been plucked from obscurity. Seemed to have a good game at Brechin. Started off in midfield on Saturday, wasn't too sure about him there, but then went to centre-back and had a really good second half of the game. So he's maybe a guy that we can watch out for. Looks quite strong, good in the tackle, decent touch on the ball. I think they've mentioned Sidibe. Obviously, he was only brought in January. That was his first time playing full-time football, so let's see what he can do. Ibby's about after a pre-season. Will he still be here? Who knows? But if he is still about come September, I think he might be the man this season.
Right, okay. And David, I wanted to ask you, before we get your predictions for the rest of the season, St Johnstone have had an exciting 16-year-old Fran Franjak signing a new deal, breaking in. They've signed a lot of young players, including the assistant manager's son. Will he get slagged? What happens if your dad's on the coaching team? Is that a thing?
He'll definitely get a lot of stick, I reckon. Yeah, it's a crazy one. But obviously, I heard that he scored 43 goals in 48 games for the Hearts B team in the Lowland League. I don't know how that looks when you're going into a Premiership team, but again, he's still young. But yeah, I'm sure he will get a bit of stick coming into his father's management. So yeah, that'll be quite funny for the boys.
And let's look at a general prediction for this season. I'm going to get a prediction and then something you think will happen this year. So let's go for David first. Prediction, where's St Johnstone going to finish this season?
I think it's a work in progress for them. I don't think they'll make top 6, but I think if they do get a bit of stability in these players that have come in, produce some decent performances, I think they'll finish around 8th.
Jamie Beatson, what are you thinking?
I'm going to go for an optimistic 9th at the moment in terms of the league placing. I think there's more to come in the squad, and I'm hopeful that we'll knit it together in a team that can operate in the Premiership this season once we get the squad totally settled in.
And if you had to predict one thing that would happen for St Johnstone this season, anything, what are you predicting, Jamie?
We're going to get an England at the Euro style draw and get a run through to the semi-finals of a cup competition. Definitely going to happen.
That seems a very Craig Levein thing, to only win 2 games but still get to a final. It does feel that thing. David, if you had to make a prediction, something that will happen this season, you think?
They'll beat Dundee and Dundee United.
A wee dig at a former club, and Jamie Beatson looks so happy. It is unbelievable. So, time to wrap things up. Thanks to David Wotherspoon and Jamie Beatson for joining us. Don't forget, we've got preview episodes dedicated to each Premiership team, so make sure you're across everything you need to know as we head into a new season. Have a listen back over the ones that are already out. And to be alerted when new episodes are out, subscribe to the Scottish Football Podcast on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone settings. Thanks for listening to St Johnstone's One, and I don't know if David Wotherspoon has any plans to go into management, but as a Partick Thistle fan, we had a player released during his testimonial season. He became our manager, so one day, David Wotherspoon, you too could throw away a 3-0 lead against Ross County in a playoff final. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
For everything you need to know about your team this season. Download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.